morning, Mr. Seleke. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Chairperson.
I see there is no file here. Are you ready?
I am ready, Chairperson.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, today we've got 3 witnesses scheduled to testify. The first witness is Ms. Matsietsi Mokholo. And Chair, because there are 3, we will, in due course of the Chairperson, just agree on the time allocation for them.
Well, certainly this witness shouldn't be long.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's just start and we'll see how it goes.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chair, I believe she's ready to take the oath. Or the affirmation.
Okay, maybe don't you want to just tell the public for their benefit where her evidence fits in, where this witness evidence fits in?
Where it fits in, okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Just so that they will follow her evidence better.
I didn't. It's because I didn't hear the last word. Yes, the Ms. Mokholo is the former DDG of the Department of Public Enterprises. She has provided the Commission with evidence that shows, or affidavit, in which she deals with her position at the time, assisting Minister Len Brown in matters pertaining to the department and SOEs, how she accompanied the minister to a meeting called on the 11th of March by Eskom, the board of Eskom at the time, dealing with the suspensions. She would also, it features also in regard to the secondment of Mr. Brown Mullifer. It features in regard to the position and appointment of Mr. Richard Seleke at the Department of Public Enterprises. And it features insofar as she was part of the war room that was established at Eskom. So it's not an evidence in regard to the transactions, which we have been busy with. Chairperson, she had been called, we had hoped to lead her evidence last year, but we ran out of space. So it's mainly about the suspensions in that regard.
Her evidence will include what she knows about the postponement of the meeting of the 26th of February, 2015. Is that right?
The 26th of February?
26th February, 2015. Was she not the acting DG who got a call from the former president, Mr. Zuma, to say the meeting of the board of Eskom, which was scheduled for the 26th of February, should be postponed?
Correct,
or
Judge.
cancelled?
Correct, you're absolutely correct.
That's quite an important feature of her evidence.
Yes, as the chairperson was talking about, it came to mind that she also talks about the call she received from the president at the time, asking her to call Mr. Tsotsi in order to cancel that meeting.
Yes, and of course she was with the minister at the meeting of the board that happened between the minister and the board on the 11th of March 2015.
Correct, Chair.
Of course, I've had a lot of evidence about the content of that meeting. She might just confirm certain things, but I've had quite a lot of evidence on that. And if her evidence is no different, there might not be any need to spend too much time on that.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That helps us in guiding her how to navigate her evidence.
Yes. Okay, all right.
She may take
you can administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Matsietsi Mokholo.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I do not.
Do you?
I'm sorry, your voice is very soft. Please raise it, Ms.
Apologies,
Mokholo.
Chair.
Start afresh.
Please state your full names for the record.
Matsietsi Mokholo.
Do you have any objections to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I do not.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the bundle we are using is Eskom Bundle 10, Exhibit U22.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Mokholo, you will have the same bundle in front of you, Eskom Bundle 10, Exhibit U22. Your affidavit is marked Exhibit U22 and is found on page 420 of that bundle. Now you know, if you've been following the commission, we're referring to the pagination, the black pagination, top left-hand corner. You are there?
Thank you. I'm there.
Thank you. So that's the first page of the affidavit. I, the undersigned Matsietsi Mokholo, you confirm that to be your name? You confirm that to be your name?
Yes, it is my name.
Yes.
Chairperson.
The affidavit runs up to page 436.
Yes.
On page 436, there's a signature of the deponent on 25 September 2020. Is that your signature?
It is my signature, Chairperson.
Thank you. So you confirm the contents of your affidavit.
Yes, I do.
I know you've mentioned that you needed to make some corrections. You want to raise that now?
Thank you, Chairperson. Just two minor edits. The first one is found on paragraph 19.
Chair, that's on page 425.
Yes.
The last, the sentence of that paragraph, Chairperson, where it indicates that the allegations of the phone call he had received from me on the evening of the 25th February 2020, the date should be 2015.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes.
The next one, Chairperson, is on paragraph 48. And that will be on page 431.
I'm sorry, what paragraph is that?
Paragraph 48. It's the correction of the PNG committee member, Ms. Venita Klein, instead of Ms. Venita Klein, Chairperson.
Say again.
Will the technicians just adjust the aircon? It's just too noisy.
Yes. Chair.
But I will ask everybody to try and raise their voices. Yes, so what, paragraph 46, did you say 46?
48, Chairperson.
48, yes. What do you want to correct in that paragraph?
The name of the PNG committee member, it must be Ms. Venita instead of Ms. Venita Klein.
Instead of Fenter, Chair.
Yes. Thank you.
Who was it?
It reads, Chair, Venita.
Ms. Venita.
Is it B or V at the beginning?
It's V.
V.
V-E-N-E-T-E.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. That will be all the edits.
Okay. Mr. Seleke,
Thank
do
you.
you recall, do you remember to have a small supplementary affidavit done to effect this correction.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me check with the Chairperson. The other alternative, Chair, would be for her to initial our affidavits where she's made these corrections.
No, she can't initial it now because this is an affidavit she did before a commission of oaths.
That's right, Chair.
She can't change it. She can't change anything on it.
Yeah.
Because that would be a different affidavit.
We will
That's why it's necessary to do a supplementary affidavit.
We will do a supplementary.
You see, if we leave it on the basis of the corrections she has done orally, you have to make sure that everyone who reads the affidavit goes to the transcript in order to see the correction. But that's risky.
Yes, no.
So it's better to have a supplementary affidavit that would be put in so that anyone would have to see that supplementary affidavit saying what corrections have been made.
Yeah, and we can resend it to also to the
Yeah,
parties
she can
as well.
do this supplementary affidavit later today or after today. Just one, or probably one paragraph.
Yes,
you know,
Chair.
saying, I just want to have picked up that there were certain mistakes in the following paragraphs. These were the mistakes. The corrections are the following. Yeah.
Correct, Chair. That's perfectly in order, Chairperson. Then I may proceed. Ms. Mokholo, thank you for your assistance to the Commission. Much of your evidence has been put to the witnesses some of the witnesses who came before the Commission already. So we will try to advise you on what was put to them and how they reacted to it. Firstly, just by way of introduction, tell the Chairperson who you are and relative to your evidence to the Commission, what was your position at the time? Where were you employed?
Thank you, Chairperson. As indicated in my affidavit, I'm currently the Deputy Director General in the Presidency, and I'm in the main responsible for corporate management. By qualification background, I'm a qualified lawyer and an admitted attorney. But when I joined the Department of Public Enterprises, it was in 2007, as the Chief Director then, who was responsible for legal counsel and governance. And in my capacity as the Chief Director, I reported then to the Deputy Director General, the DDG, who was the head of legal. And she subsequently resigned, and I started acting in her position as the DDG from the 12th of January 2011 until the position was advertised, for which I successfully applied and was appointed as the DDG responsible for legal governance, risk and transaction at the time from the 31st of May 2011. And I remained in that position until I was seconded to act as the Chief Executive Officer at SA Express, which is one of the entities within the portfolio of the Department of Public Enterprises. And that acting was from December 2017 until August 2018, where then I took a lateral transfer to the Presidency with effect from the 1st of September 2018. So I'm still in that position currently. But during my tenure as the DDG at DPE, I was also appointed as the acting Director General, and I've acted in that position from time to time, including the period between September 2014 and September 2015, during the tenure of Minister Brown. And this is when the position of the DG became vacant when Mr. Matona resigned to take a position as the CEO at Eskom. So since my appointment as the DDG, I have acted as the DG on various occasions in the department during the tenure of both Minister Gigaba and Minister Brown. So that would be the background.
So you're acting, you are permanently appointed in the position of DDG from, you say from 31 May 2011.
Yes.
31 May 2011. You then have acting stints during the time of your permanent office as a DDG, acting stints as an acting DG.
Yes, Chairperson.
And that is after what you say Mr. Matona had left the DPE.
Indeed, Chairperson.
That period of acting is between September 2014 to September 2015.
Yes, Chairperson.
So in February, March, April 2015, you would have been acting as a DG.
Yes. Yes, Chairperson.
And who was the minister during this time in 2015?
It was Minister Lynn Brown.
Minister Lynn Brown. Yes, now, as I said, your evidence has already been put before the witnesses. If this position when this position was vacant, was there a time in which the department sought to fill that position, the one in which you were acting, the DG position?
Yes, Chairperson. When Minister appointed me to act, she indicated as well that she would like to fill the position in the department, because that was also a standard that we were trying to uphold, that we don't want too long vacancies similar in the SOEs, because at that time, a lot of SOEs were having vacancies. So the principle was, as a shareholder department, we must uphold the principle that we don't want two vacancies that are extended for a long period of time, or actings that are extended for a period of time. So there was an indication and the intent to fill the position.
So tell the chairperson whether or not was there an advertisement for the position during the time when you were acting? Did you apply for this position? Did you succeed if you applied?
Maybe before that, can you confirm the period during which you were acting DG? Was it only the month of September 2015?
Before then, there were other, as I indicated, Chairperson, that I would act from time to time.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but just after Mr. Matona had left, for what period did you act as DG?
It was for a year, from the September 2014 to the end of September 2015.
By the way, he left, it was in 2014 that he left the Department of Public Enterprises to go to Eskom, that is Mr. Matona.
Yes, so I started acting in September so that he can do at least a month handover on critical matters that the DG would be seized with. And then he started his position in Eskom in October. So my acting was September 2014 to September 2015.
In September, was he still DG but not working, maybe on leave, or had he ceased to be DG, Mr. Matona, in September 2014?
He was still the DG. He was doing his handover to me.
Oh,
yes, and
okay.
Preparing to take over.
Yes.
So he was serving like notice, he had resigned.
Oh,
Yes.
so he was not actually at work.
He was not actually at work.
Yeah.
Literally, yes.
So that's why somebody had to be appointed to act in his position.
Yes.
And then you acted from September 2014 until when?
until September 2015.
Oh, okay, all right. No, that's the
Exactly a
clarification I
period of 12
wanted.
months. Yeah.
Yes. And then somebody else acted as DG in October and November
November.
2015. And Mr. Seleke was then appointed with effect from 1 December 2015.
2015.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll make sure that we make a clear distinction between Seleke and Seleka.
Yes, yes, Chairperson. I've trained myself on that. Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I don't think there is anything wrong, Mr. Seleka, for you to insist that you are Seleka, not Seleke.
Absolutely, Chair.
Because I also insist that I'm Zondo, I'm not Zondi. So, both in the case of Seleka and Seleke and Zondi and Zondo, the difference is just one alphabet.
That's right, Chair.
Yeah,
And it can make a huge difference, Chair.
but it can make a big difference. Okay, all right.
Thank you,
Please
Chair.
continue.
And indeed, Chair, my recollection is that Mr. Matuna was appointed as the CEO at Eskom effective 1 October 2014. Yes, Ms. Mokholo, you were answering that question about the advertisement for the post and whether or not you applied for this position of DG.
Yes, I had interest in the position, Chairperson. I applied, and
Was it advertised?
it was advertised.
Okay.
Yes.
When was it advertised? Do you remember?
I think the first advert, Chair, should have been in towards the end of the year, but it was closing. I think it was around the following year, February 2015. That should have been the first advert.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes, yeah.
So you applied for the position?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did,
Continue.
Chairperson. And then I had, when I was appointed acting DG, we appointed another colleague to be the DDG, to be responsible for the legal governance and risk. And so the idea also was that I should not be conflicted in dealing with two positions, because sometimes you can act as a DG but still do your main responsibility from your original position. But in this case, we delineated those two. Again, because I did indicate to the minister my interest that I would be applying for the position, so that then as the DDG legal, you don't have to be advising at the same time your HR, which would be then seized with the adverts and the matters relating to the position. So for that reason, there was somebody else who was the acting DDG for legal governance and risk. So I applied for the position the first time around. Then the advert closed, and with time, I did not even make contact that much with HR, so that to respect the process.
I'm sorry.
The noise.
Yeah, the aircon continues to make some noise, but I must check. Is it quite hot? I think your junior nods positively.
Chair, I don't feel particularly
maybe-
hot. As the last 2 days.
Let's see if there are other nods.
The heat came from everywhere the last 2 days.
Well, you see, you're not getting a lot of support. Maybe switch it off for now. Let's see how it is later on. And your junior must just ask you to indicate to me when she thinks it's becoming unbearable. And then we will see what can be done. It's just that it makes it difficult for me to hear what the witness is saying, as well as Mr. Seleka. Okay, all right. So I hope somebody has gone to adjust it even lower.
Yeah.
It may be they don't need to switch it off, they just need to adjust it. I'm not sure exactly what needs to be done technically. But if they switch it off, let's see, and your junior will indicate.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay, all right. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Ms. Mokholo. Do you want to continue?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. So, yes, and then I had applied for the position and I left it there. And later on, then I received communication through HR indicating that the position is going to be re-advertised again. And the reasons were that the first one was that the department did not follow the proper prescripts laid down by the Department of Public Service and Administration in the advertising of the position. And the second one was that there was an issue relating to my qualifications. There was one course that was outstanding that would definitely confirm an LLB to me. So I needed to do an oral of some sort with the University of Durban, Westfield. So, and they indicated that because the position required that confirmation of a postgraduate position, the advert, the position would have to be re-advertised. And then all the other candidates that had applied, they must reapply again. So then it was advertised for the second time, and then it was advertised.
That would have been around when, in 2015, when it was re-advertised?
It would have been by around March, April. We can confirm the dates,
Yeah, okay,
Chairperson.
okay.
Yes, yeah. So that was the second advert. Then
Before you proceed, what did you think of the reasons that were given for re-advertising the position when you were told about them?
Yes, Chairperson, as I say, it was, the first was relating to the outstanding course, a short course, and then the other one was the fact that the department did not comply with Public Service Administration in issuing the advert.
Were you told in what way the department had not complied?
No, they did not indicate in what way. It was just that the department did not comply with the DPSA prescripts in advertising the position.
And then the other one relating to you was what about a cause? What was the position?
The position was that it will put, it puts me not as a I don't qualify even in the short round or even to be shortlisted in the position because of that cause.
What was the position? What cause was it? What were the requirements of the position in the first advertisement?
In the first advertisement,
Minimum requirements.
yeah, it did not require the postgrad or the masters as it was put in the latter qualifications or in the latter adverts. It was just a degree.
A bachelor's degree.
A bachelor's degree, 10 years experience in the public service, especially at SMS level, and a full understanding of the department, its state-owned entities within its portfolio, the understanding of the PFMA, the Companies Act, just the way the department operates and the environment within which the SOE operates.
Yes. So at that stage, what were your qualifications, academic qualifications? At the stage you applied in response to the first advertisement?
It was a BPROC and an LLB that needed that the oral, which was subsequently given. But by the time when the advert was, the reasons were given to me, it was a BPROC.
So you had a BPROC,
Yes.
which is a 4-year junior degree.
Yes.
You had studied towards your LLB, but had not yet completed it.
Yes, it had one course.
There was one
course.
subject
Yes.
left. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the the reason then that they gave with regard to your qualifications was what?
Was that it does not put me in the race based on the fact that they did not comply with public service and administration.
But did they say that the prescripts of the Department of Public Service and Administration required a senior degree or a second degree for this position?
No, Chairperson. That's why.
That's not what they said.
No, that's not what they were saying. Hence, the initial advert did not have that. And the second advert did not have that as well. I think it was, the position was advertised 3 times. So I think it was for on the third advert that the master's was put in as a requirement for the position.
Do you know who the other candidates were who had applied in response to the first advertisement, or do you not know?
No, I do not know, Chairperson. As I indicated also, even the HR, the HR department, I made sure that I delineate myself, not even to ask questions relating to
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Now, so this story, when you were being told the reasons why the position would be re-advertised, the story about your qualifications was exactly what about this outstanding course? Let us repeat that. I'm trying to follow. The advert that had been, the job advert said you must have a bachelor's degree.
Yes.
That's the minimum in terms of academic qualifications. And it required you to have at least 10 years service in the public service at senior management level.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So what were they saying?
It came across, Chairperson, to say they cannot proceed because the DPSA requirement was that that initial advert in the first place was defective, basically.
And who told you this?
The HR.
Who at HR?
It
Can
was
you remember?
Ms. Henrietta Stross. Henrietta Stross.
Yes.
Yes.
And then, in any event, the position was then re-advertised.
Yes.
And were the minimum requirements for the position as stipulated in the second advert the same as the minimum requirements for the position as had been stipulated in the first advert?
Yes, Chairperson. This first and the second adverts, they were almost similar. They would have been minor, but there was not material differences between the first and the second. Hence, I still remained in the race. I only withdrew with the third advert, because with the third advert, definitely I did not qualify for the position.
Okay, I'm not sure that I'm following. I'm trying to remember what the minimum requirements of the position for DG or DPE were as contained in the first advert, and you have already told me what those were. As far as academic qualifications were concerned, you said that it required a bachelor's degree. It did not require the candidate to have a senior degree or a master's degree, okay? And then there were other minimum requirements. As far as the second advertisement is concerned, did it have the same minimum academic requirements that it called for with regard to those who wanted to apply?
Yes, Chairperson, it had the same. There would have been changes. I just can't recall exactly what would have been different, but it had, in the main, it was still the same. It was the third advert that then had.
Oh, there was a
changed.
third advert.
There was a third advert. And in the third advert, that's then I withdrew because I then indicated to HR that I would not qualify on the basis of the new advert of the position.
Now, you said the first advert, the closing date for applications was sometime in March 2015 or February, is that right?
Yes.
First advert.
Yes.
And then the second advert was
It should have been-
issued around April, March, April. You are not sure, but somewhere there.
Yes, and
Yeah.
closing date was also around the middle of the year, and then there was a third advert, and which then it closed just slightly after I think it was July or August, something like that.
Somewhere around July, mid-year.
Yeah, yes.
That's the
That's
third
the third,
advert.
Yes.
Now, how different were the minimum requirements specified in the third advert compared to the minimum requirements specified in this first and second adverts?
The third advert had on qualifications, it added, the first two, they said, postgrad would be something like an added advantage.
It would be a recommendation, would be
Yes,
recommended.
Yes, it would be an added, it was the first advert, they said it would be an added advantage if you have. But in the third one, it was a mandatory requirement. So a master's or any other level.
Now, the first one and the second one, what did they say? Did they say a second degree, or did they say a senior degree would be an added advantage, or did they say a master's degree would be an added advantage?
They said yes, the postgrad would be an added advantage.
Or a postgraduate degree?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which could mean it could be an honors or
yes,
LLB
yes.
or whatever. Okay. And then the third one.
Yeah, the third one was the one that was prescriptive in terms of making it mandatory, not an added advantage.
Did it say postgraduate degree or did it say a master's degree?
I can't recall, Chairperson, whether it's postgraduate or master, but I think it was master's.
Do we have all the adverts here by any chance?
No, Chair, we don't
don't.
have it presently.
Oh.
And I'm just passing a note to my investigators to check.
I think it will be important to get all three of those advertisements. But you are saying that in the third advert, the possession of, and you can't remember whether it said a senior degree or second degree or postgraduate qualification or a master's was compulsory, or are you able to remember whether it said a master's?
It had a postgraduate, and I think there was also a master's. The postgraduate or a master's was a mandate. It was mandatory compared to the previous one, but the word postgraduate was there.
So is your evidence therefore the following? I just want to make sure I get this clearly. It's just a pity we don't have the adverts, but I'm sure we will get them. Yes. That whereas the first and second adverts said a postgraduate qualification or degree would be an added advantage, the third advert said one of two things, and you can't remember which one. Either it said a postgraduate degree is compulsory, or it said a master's degree is compulsory.
Yes, Chairperson.
You just can't remember which one it said.
I can't remember which one was this, yeah.
And then, because on your LLB you had one course outstanding, you then didn't meet the requirements.
Yes, Chairperson.
And that's why you decided to withdraw. Okay, all right. Mr. Seleke.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Mokholo, in the first time around, when you were told that the DPSA requirements have not been met, were you told in what respect?
No, the chairperson, as I said, it just said the advert did not meet the standard of the DPSA. But it will be reissued, and all the candidates that had previously applied, they can still apply. And indeed, in the advert, it said that you can still apply even if you were you had applied before.
What we will need, Mr. Seleke, if this hasn't been done already,
Yes, Chair.
we need to obtain all the 3 adverts, number 1. Number 2, we need to obtain the public service prescripts relating to the position of DG.
Yes, Chair.
I do recall that in the Department of Labor, somebody was appointed as DG, even though he didn't have a degree. And there was a query, and this is something that has been here in the commission, a query, because it was said in terms of the public service, the minimum requirements for the position of DG is that at least you should have a bachelor's degree. Now, I want to know also, so to the extent that the advert may have said candidates should have a master's degree, I think that would be very strange. I would like to have that compared with other government departments, whether it was a requirement for DGs in other government departments,
Yes.
or whether this department specifically decided that for this position, they wanted somebody with a master's degree. So we'll need to have that comparison.
Yes, Chair.
But I must also ask Ms. Mokholo, Mr. Matona, that is now the previous DG, do you know whether when he was appointed as DG, he had a master's degree?
Chairperson, maybe we need to explain how.
Or rather, I should be saying whether holding a master's degree was a requirement.
Yes, Chair. Mr. Matona's case was slightly different because his appointment into the department was a lateral transfer from the Department of Trade and Industry then. So he was already a DG in another department. So the Public Service Act and regulations, they do allow that you can transfer laterally. So he transferred laterally to the department. But I do know that he does, I'm not sure of his qualification in terms of masters, but I know.
Yeah, anyway, we've got his affidavit and CV, but that might not tell us what the requirements for the position was when he got appointed or transferred. But I would have thought also that to the extent that different departments might have different minimum requirements for the position of DG, I would imagine that you can't transfer somebody from one department who meets the requirements of that department into a position in another department which has got different requirements. You can't just transfer. They would have to meet the requirements for the position to which they are transferred.
Correct, Chairperson. It's the same as transferring a DDG to another department. I transferred from Department of Public Enterprises as a DDG, meeting the requirements of a DDG.
Yes,
So
yeah.
it will
yeah.
still be the same principle.
Okay, all right. Even after the third advert, you never got to know who the other candidates were for the position.
No, Chairperson, I only got to know the successful candidate.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair. Did you have any conversation with the Minister, Minister Lynn Brown, during this time of your application for this position?
Not during the process, as I said, that it was also to delineate, and because it would have created conflict. But it was before, when I was still acting, when she indicated that she would want to fill the position. Then we did have a conversation.
Okay, so the third time around, the advert is issued. It requires a master's or post-grad, you can't recall. Can you recall what was the end result in the third time around?
So yes, I withdrew from the position, but then also then indicated to the...
You mean you withdrew from the application?
From the application, yes. But still retained the acting. So on the basis of, after the advert, the minister indicated to me that she realized, she was informed later that I have withdrawn. And then I explained that...
Please look this side.
No,
when you-
yes. My apologies, Chairperson. Yes, she said she learned after the closing date that I withdrew my application. I indicated that, but I would like to still remain as acting so that I can prepare the handover and for the coming DG. And this conversation we were having in light when Minister was indicating to me that she would like to rotate the acting within the department to bring another colleague to act. So I indicated that given the fact that the Minister intends to fill the position as early as November, December, there's no point to bring somebody to step in for a month or two. I might as well continue so that it gives me enough time, because I'm no longer in the race, but I'm still acting, give me enough time to prepare handover report for the incoming DG. Other than I prepare report and then somebody else acts for 2 months, they still have to prepare another report. Or the new DG can have 2 handover reports. So that's the conversation that I had then, the minister.
Yes, but can you tell the chairperson what was the outcome of the third process to look for a person to fill the DG position?
Yes, we were informed through the news flash that the recruitment process has been completed, and there's a new DG that will be joining the department as of the 1st of December, Mr. Richard Seleke.
What did the minister say when you suggested that there shouldn't be another acting appointment in the position of DG for 1 or 2 months before the new DG came in, that you should continue so that you could properly prepare a handover report?
She indicated that she understood my reasons, but she still felt that rotation to another DDG would serve the department good. And there were many challenges that the department was facing. I was under pressure in terms of work, and therefore she still believes that there must be somebody else that can take over.
Okay. And then indeed, she appointed somebody else?
Yes, she appointed another colleague, DDG, to act for those 2 months.
For October and November 2015?
Yes, the intent, because the process was so advanced, The intent was just that the colleague, the DDG colleague would just act for a month. Hence the letter that was sent, because we normally send the letters to all the other, other departments. We also sent letters to the state-owned companies within the portfolio to inform them that there would be an acting DG. Similar when I was appointed, the cluster was informed, the SOEs were informed. So in this case as well, Minister had to inform them that there would be another DDG that would be acting. So that letter was only for a month. He said the DDG would act as acting for the month of October. My understanding was that the intent was that the process was so advanced that the new DG could even start in November. But I think in the process of going to cabinet and dealing with other matters, it could not be November. Hence, the DDG colleague acted for 2 months. It was October and November, and then the new DG started the 1st of December.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the person who is appointed to act in this position you've been acting is another colleague of yours within your office?
Yes.
Within the department?
Within the department.
So the suggestion that you remain acting until the next person formally appointed was not taken?
Yes, the minister did not oblige me on the request, and then we agreed that I'll start working on my handover report.
So then there's the acting person again for 2 months, you say, and we have put your evidence to the other parties that Mr. Seleke then gets to be appointed as the DG with effect from 1 December 2015.
Correct, Chairperson.
I think you had also, when does he get to be introduced to you after his appointment?
So,
when I say you, I mean the officials in the department.
yes, he joined on the 1st, and on that first week, he only met with the executive committee in the department, the EXCO, just to introduce himself to EXCO. Then he was formally introduced by the minister to the entire department mid-December. It was at the year-end function of the department, which was held at the Tinel. So that's when minister, it was just before the 16th of December, because normally by then most people, they go on leave. So in terms of the calendar of activity, it was agreed that the introduction of the DG to the entire department must happen before the mid-December. So he was introduced to the department around that, between the 15th and the 14th or so of December at the year-end function.
This is December 2015.
December 2015.
Do you know whether Mr. Seleke had a master's degree? If you don't know, you don't know.
Yes, at the year-end function, Minister did allude to that when she read a short bio of the DG and then indicated that he's also a seasoned senior official in the department in possession of a master's degree. And
I'm sorry, you swallowed your words towards the end of your last sentence. Just repeat that answer, please, and face this side. I don't know whether you need to bring the mic a little closer to you, or you, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chairperson. I was saying that the minister, when she introduced the DG, she read a short bio of the DG and indicated that indeed he was in possession of a master's degree and is also a seasoned public official who has been also a DG at the provincial level.
Okay.
Ma'am Mokholo, the Commission has heard evidence in regard to an email address of infoportal1@zoho.com. And at the initial stages of those who testified before the Commission, the version was that email address belongs to Mr. Richard Seleke, and some emails had been exchanged with that email address prior to December 2015. And yet it was said to be his email address as a DG at the department, at your department, DPS, DP?
DPE.
DPE. Do you have any comment on that?
Chairperson, the email address at the department, there's a specific the email that is used for a DG. So the DG would have, for example, I would have an email as the DG Matsietsi Mokholo at dpe.gov.za. But there would be an additional email address that can be used to send correspondence to the DG. And it's managed by the DG's office. And it's definitely not the info portal or the Zoho. That email is dg@dpe. So that would be the email address that would be used.
Of course, you're talking about an official email address. You're not talking about a personal email address that might belong to a partner DG.
Yes. Then there would also, all the DGs happened with Mr. Matuna, with myself as well, and even with Mr. Seleke. There would be private emails. Because sometimes our server is down, we need to communicate with the minister 24/7 literally. So even at home, you need to be able to have, so we would be allowed personal addresses that we would apply permission with the IT department of the department that we can use. As I say, Mr. Matona had one, Mr. Seleke had one, but it was not that info portal Zoho. Mr. Seleke actually used a different private email.
Did you say that you would need to apply to somebody in the department to have for permission to use your personal email address for work purposes?
Yes, Chairperson, for security reasons. So I would, for my private email, the iCloud email that I would use, I needed to get permission from the IT to say so that it can be loaded, because it would be private, but I would still receive work-related information.
Yes.
So it is a requirement. At least our IT informed us it is a requirement, and it's something that CETA encourages. I know even in the presidency that I had to get that request through our IT, that my private iCloud email address can be used for official business in the event my email is down or for other reasons.
Was it the policy of the Department of Public Enterprises that for any employee or official of the Department of Public Enterprises to use his or her personal or private email address for work purposes, they would need to apply to the IT department or whatever, or section. They couldn't just use their private email addresses for work purposes without that arrangement having been made with the IT section.
Yes, Chairperson, you would have to inform
Yes.
IT, because remember they have to load it
Yes.
for you, so you would have to inform
Yes.
the IT. You would not just use it. Then I specifically remember, because there was a form, at least that I was given. You just complete and you indicate, and then you give the reason. The same as I'm saying if I'm to correlate that with what happens currently in the presidency, it's the same thing that you even apply for what we call remote access, because you are outside the server, so you need to be brought in, because you'll be receiving information that relates to the department. So there's a form that you just complete, and then you apply for this person to be given that kind of a remote access.
Was this policy a written policy, or it was not written but was known? In other words, is there a document that one could find which had this policy?
I think, Chairperson, it was more of a standard operating procedure. It's something that we knew that even when you are a new employee, when you receive those forms, you would be told that if you were to use a private, what would be the rules and norms if you use your private email. So it will not be prohibited, but you will be told what would be the steps to be followed if you want to use a private email. Definitely, it was something that it's known. Yeah.
Are you, in other words, saying you don't know if it was a written policy or a written rule, but you know that it was known that this was what was expected?
Yeah, Chairperson, I would not say there is a document that is written specifically with ABCD law, but you would know that if you join the department, you are given the department email address, and then you would indicate that, is it possible for me to use my a private email, and then you will be told what are the conditions and circumstances under which that could happen. And that also applied even to tools like iPad. There was a process in which you would not just put everything on your iPad that is work-related. So I had to take my iPad in and request that this is my private email bought by my own money, but I use it for work. So, and then can it be used? And then, because then there's a serial, they would ask you for a number, or the serial number of the iPad or something like so. So there were those kind of the practices that we would know.
What was your understanding at the time of how well known this requirement was among employees and officials of the department?
If I'm to use the level of this SMS level from, let's say, director, chief director, the DDG and DG, I would say it was well known because most of us use gadgets. There's even colleagues who received emails, official emails on their phones, and you needed to go to IT. It needs to for them to put your email. It could be a DPE email, but on your phone there was a procedure for that as well. So it was not something that you just do, and IT would have to be brought in, and for them to do that, you would sign some forms. When I was doing the exit from DPE, there was a form that I was given where when you hand over your access card, and they would ask you if you were using external email addresses, were you on the network of the department, the server and everything. So I would say if from director, chief director, DDG, DG, it was a well-known because we use smartphones most of the time for work-related purposes.
With regard to people at secretary level or PAs, what's your thinking? You think it might have been less known among them or not?
It will be different for those, for example, that would work in my office. When I was the acting DG, they would know that when they send an email, especially if after hours or sometimes it's during the day, but because we are inundated with meetings, they would then copy my iCloud, and then they would send even a message, WhatsApp, please check agent email, and it's also copied on your iCloud, so that even if I leave Eskom's meeting very late, I don't have to come to the office, I go straight home, I can still access that email. So the PAs, office managers that worked with SMS members, they would also know, because they would know, they would have access to those emails, our emails. We'll give them our private emails so that they would know where to send. The office of the minister, they would have my private email so that if there's something urgent that they needed to bring to my attention, and it's where there's holidays, and then they know where to get hold of me, they can always send.
A PA to the minister You would expect her to know, to have known such or not?
Definitely, Chairperson, yes.
She would have known that requirement. Okay, all right.
And what about the DG and the DDG? Would they know each other's private email addresses?
Yes, Chairperson, as I indicated, I knew Mr. Madona's private email. I know Mr. Seleke's private email, because I would send things after hours, that matters that are urgent, and then I would also send them WhatsApps to say, please check your email, there's an urgent matter, so I would know their private email.
Do you know that it was info portal 1 at Zoho?
It was not.
It was not that email address. Do you know where Mr. Seleke came from prior to his appointment at DPE? Where was he employed, in other words, before coming there?
Before coming as a DG?
Yes, as a DG at DPE.
Employment, I know he was a board member at the point at Transnet, because he was part of the batch that we appointed in December 2014 when we did the Transnet and the Eskom board appointment.
At Transnet 2014. Let's see. Well, tell the chairperson if there is a protocol, because you see the evidence that was presented in regard to this info portal email dealt with the chairperson of the board at Eskom interacting directly, if you're listening to his evidence, interacting directly with the DG. You could tell the chairperson, during your acting stint, how did you interact with the SOEs? How did you interact with let me say SOEs, whether at board level or executive level? What was the chain of interaction between the two entities?
So, Chairperson, we had DP in the main, because it's a department that had, unlike other departments that would also have a policy role, a regulatory role, we only had one mandate of a shareholder function. So we are not like Department of Transport that will also have regulators, that will also have the function of developing policy. Ours was a shareholder management function. So we had over the years tried to perfect that, because we were pitching the department as going to be the center of excellence when it comes to shareholder management. So we had what we call a communication protocol between the department and its SOEs. The chairperson corresponds and interacts in the main with the minister, because the minister is the executive authority, and then the chairperson of the board is the head of what is called the accounting authority, which is the board. So then the communication would be between minister and the chairperson. On exceptional cases, then the minister can give you an instruction to call the chairperson. But I would not write to the chairperson. Letters are to be prepared. It's the minister that will sign off on those letters. And then as the DG will interact with the CEO. And the rest of us, the DDGs, will communicate with other executives or prescribed officers within the SOEs. It is a protocol that finds itself in a way partly from the PFMA, but we had to perfect it because the PFMA was not dealing with the shareholder issues in the main. It was more financial management issues. So we perfected that as a tool in the department. And we will communicate that through when we do board inductions, we would indicate there was always 2 slides that we would put in there that deals with the delineation of roles between the minister, even minister step-in rights, intervention rights, vis-a-vis the board, and then how the board must interact with the executive so that the board does not become an executive board and management as well. So there was that protocol in terms of communication between the minister and the chair, the CEO and the DG and the other executives with the other officials as well.
Yes. So the chairperson of the board, according to the communication protocol, will interact directly with the minister.
Yes, Chairperson.
All right? That's the chairperson of the board. The CEO of the SOEs would then be engaging directly with the DGs, the DG.
Yes.
Yeah, just speak for the chairperson to hear.
Yes, yes, Chairperson.
Thank you. And at DDG level, you will deal with other executives.
Yes, at the DG level, you'll deal with what would be your prescribed officers, because the CEO and the CFO are ex-officio members of the board. So in most cases, those are the ones that would deal with if they don't deal with the DG, or at times they would be dealing with the minister through specific meetings. But then at our level, we'll deal with other. Only in exceptional cases, as I indicated, that the minister can request that Matsi call the chairperson, but it was not really a norm. It's always the minister that communicates with the chair.
Yes, but also in this case, what we have is that the chairperson would say, I am communicating directly with the DG. Would that be the norm?
It would not be a norm, Chairperson. It would have to be under exceptional circumstances and cases, as I indicated. One of the forums that we used to also ensure this communication protocol, we established what we call the Chairperson's Forum. In those Chairperson's Forum, they will be led by the ministers, but it will be the chairperson of each SOE and their CEO. And in those meetings, it will be to encourage those kind of protocols as well. One of the reasons why we wanted to do this was also to address the concern that was coming from a lot of CEOs, where they felt that the chairpersons were also becoming too executive. And also the concerns that sometimes the ministers, the other chairpersons will complain that the ministers are becoming executive. Minister communicates directly with the CEO, and the CEO does not feed back to the chairperson. Therefore, the chairperson is not aware of things that are happening. So we wanted then to try to correct that and craft this communication through the Chairperson's Forum, and then we will encourage this kind of a protocol.
Yeah. During your acting?
I think we must take the tea adjournment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We'll take the tea adjournment. It's 11:15. We'll resume at 11:30.
Thank you, Chair.
Tea adjournment. Okay, let's continue.
Thank you, Chairperson. Ms. Mokholo, you are still under oath. Just before the lunch adjournment, the tea adjournment, I was asking you about, you were rather testifying about the protocol and the communications between the DPE and the various SOEs. Now, let me be direct in regard to how you dealt with the SOEs. During your tenure as an acting DG, that year, September 2014 to September 2015, did you have any email exchanges sent to you directly from Eskom chairperson?
No, Chairperson.
Be it Mr. Tsotsi or Dr. Ngubani?
From their official...
No, not from their official, from their private email address to your private email address.
No, Chairperson, I have not had that kind of interaction with them. Yeah.
Did they approach you in regard to Eskom is seeking to provide is being approached by a supplier or various suppliers and is concluding contracts with them and asked for your view in regard to the awarding of those contracts?
No, Chairperson.
Did you have to deal with them in regard to which newspaper houses, Sunday Times or City Press, you name them, that they could deal with or not deal with?
No, Chairperson, no.
And that is the position to the end of your acting as the acting DG?
Yes, for the whole 12 months, no. Yeah.
In the beginning of 2015, February 2015, and we have put this, we've heard from Mr. Tsotsi that you made a telephone call to him. You made a telephone call on the eve of a meeting that the board of Eskom had to have on the 26th of February 2015. Could you, in a nutshell, just relate to the chairperson, how did that call come about?
Thank you, Chairperson. So,
I'm sorry. Before you proceed,
The noise again.
Mr. Seleke, I suspect that your junior took the opportunity during the tea break to make representations to these technicians.
I think they acted
But is it still fine? Is it tolerable? If they can, okay, all right. But do say when it's too much for you. Okay, all right.
She never feels the heat, Chair.
Yes, Ms. Mokholo, you can continue. I interrupted you while you were giving evidence.
thank you, Chairperson. Yes, Chairperson, so as the DG or as the acting DG, it's a norm, especially when Parliament is in session, that you would work between two offices. You would work between the Cape Town office and we would work within the Pretoria office. On this occasion, it was around the 25th of Feb 2015. I was in Cape Town working from our plane office in Cape Town. And when I'm in Cape Town, I intend to work until late in the office because then there's no family to rush home to. So I'd rather spend more time in the office. So I had left the office late that evening. And the minister, I remember the minister was traveling out of the country. I think it was with Dinel. I can't remember the exact country they were traveling to, but it was for an air show. So I remember that vividly because during that time I would also, make mental note and also notes of things that I would have to keep a record of, so that when on minister's return, I can be able to provide update on events that took place in her absence. As I say in my affidavit, I had returned to the hotel where I was staying at this Strand Hotel, and it was around 8, so after 8. Then I received a call. It was from a landline number 021. And again, I remember vividly that because I received it on my mobile, and my first reaction was, probably there's something that I have forgotten in the office, or I did not log properly because I left the office late, or something that the security in the office, they wanted to bring to my attention. So when I answered the call, there was a male voice on the other line, on the other side of the line, which greeted me, and then they wanted to confirm my details, whether they're speaking to me as the acting DG in the department. And then I confirmed those, and then they then asked me to hold on for the...
I'm sorry. Just repeat exactly, as far as you can recall, what the voice on the other end of the line said. Did it say something? Is it Miss Mokholo or whatever? Just say exactly what the other person said and what you said in response. I want the content of that conversation.
Okay.
As it happened, as far as you can remember.
Yes, Chairperson, as I indicated, it was a male voice, and they asked, are you Matsietsi Mokholo? To which I responded in the affirmative, yes. The acting DG in DPE, and I said yes. Then the person, I can't recall whether they gave me their name, and then they said, please hold on for the president. So, without thinking, the chairperson, I then said to the caller, which president? And the male, the voice then replied and said, President Zuma. And then I then said, I apologized, and I said, oh, thank you, and then they put me on hold. Few seconds later, it was the president on the other line, Mr. Zuma. He greeted me in Zulu, so the conversation that I would have with him, that I would narrate now, was in a combination or a mixture of Zulu and English. But he greeted me in Zulu, Sawubona Ntombazana, which means hello or good evening, young lady. And I said, we exchanged pleasantries with the president. And then he informed me that I've been trying to get hold of your minister and your deputy minister, but I've not been successful. And I indicated that, yes, Mr. President, the minister is not available, she's traveling. And then the president then said, so you are the acting DG? And I said, yes, Mr. President. Said, so you are in charge. And then he went on then to say, there is a board meeting tomorrow at Eskom, to which then I replied that, Mr. President, I would not be aware of the meeting because we don't normally know the board meetings, and indeed we don't get the calendar of board meetings in the calendar of activities. If I may then explain, Chairperson, that the norm is that at the beginning of the year, every time we do what we call a calendar of activities in the department with the SOEs, so that we can we can know if they have events that they would want the minister to attend, to do opening remarks or address a particular, so that then at least we can then plan minister's activity. But in that calendar of activities, we don't get board meetings at all. So I indicated that to the president because I wanted to explain that we don't get involved in board meetings, so I would not be aware that there is a board meeting the following day. Then to which the president responded that he was not asking, he was actually informing me that there was a meeting the following day at Eskom. And because he is unable to reach the minister and the deputy minister, and I am the acting DG, he would like me to call the chairperson and ask him to postpone the meeting until the minister is back. So then I said it to the President, I suspect, Mr. President, that the chairperson would want the reasons for this postponement. Then the President said, no, just inform the chairperson that he must postpone the meeting and await further instructions from his shareholder minister. So then that was the end of the call with the President.
Did you say that he was asking you, that is Mr. Zuma, he was asking you to communicate with the chairperson of the Eskom board and ask him to postpone the meeting that was scheduled for the following day? Or was he saying you must do that, but he also was going to speak to the chairperson of the board? Is it both? Or he was asking you to call the chairperson of the board and ask him to, I don't know whether you said cancel the meeting or postpone the meeting.
He didn't inform that he was going to call the chairperson himself.
He did not inform you
He did not
that?
inform me that.
Okay.
He told me to place the call. As a matter of fact, as I say that the conversation was in both Zulu and English. On this part, he said, "Cela usihlalo ahlehlise umhlangano."
Oh,
Yes.
okay,
yes,
okay,
okay. And then that's when I asked.
Yes.
That, but
Okay.
I suspect he's going to ask for the reasons for the postponement.
Yes.
And he said, no, tell him to await further instruction from the minister.
Just repeat that. What did you say when you said the chairperson, I suspect, might ask for reasons?
He says that, no, just inform the chairperson that you must wait for further instructions and reasons from the minister.
From the shareholder
From the
minister?
shareholder minister.
Yes. Okay. Just say in English the Zulu part that you just said, because you know what it means.
Yes.
I think you said,
He said in English it will mean inform the chairperson that he must postpone the meeting and await further instructions from his shareholder minister.
yes. Well, I don't know if this might be important. On the Zulu version, I think you say he used that you must cela, that you, which would be you must ask the chairperson. But I don't know whether on the English version you are saying he asked you to inform the chairperson to cancel the meeting. Obviously, well, I don't know whether isiZulu is your, or how well you know it, whether it was your understanding of what he said in Zulu, that he was saying you must inform the chairperson to cancel the meeting or postpone the meeting, or whether your understanding was that he was asking you to ask the chairperson to postpone the meeting.
Chair, it was clear that he was saying inform him in a sense that the meeting should not proceed.
Yes.
The meeting should not proceed.
Yes.
Because if he was able to locate the minister, that's what minister would have been informed as well.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
was, my understanding was that it was really an instruction to say
Yes.
to tell, or inform the chairperson.
Yeah.
Not that the meeting should not proceed, but await further reasons from the
Yes.
instructions from the shareholder.
Yes. It may be that the Zulu part that you said he used, it may be that part in isiZulu meant he was asking you to ask the chairperson to postpone. it may be that in the end it might make no difference at a practical level, whether it was a request or an instruction. But to the extent that there might be some significance in whether he was giving an instruction that the meeting be postponed or it was a request, there might be those differences. But the long and short of it is whether it was an instruction or a request, the idea was that the meeting, the chairperson should postpone or cancel the meeting. Was it cancel or postpone?
It was postponed because the conversation in me, a particular chairperson asking for the reasons was that I suspected the chairperson would want reasons for the postponement.
Yes. In any event, he was saying until further instructions from the shareholder minister.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So we have heard Mr. Tsotsi's evidence that you did call him, you did convey the message of the President to him. Can you recall what you said to him? Maybe, is it something the same along the lines you have just explained to the chairperson? If it is, then we don't have to traverse it again.
But I think it is important, chairperson, maybe to explain that I did not, and it links to what the chairperson was asking, whether the President then informed me or told me that he would be also going to call Mr. Tsotsi. Immediately after that, I did not call the chairperson immediately. And first thing that I did, I tried calling the minister. Understanding that, our understanding was that even if she's out traveling abroad, but if there are emergencies, I can always get in touch with her. She did not pick up, and then I followed by a text message. She did not respond. So there was a time lapse between when I received the call and before I placed the call to the chairperson. But I also thought of, because the President in the conversation indicated that he also tried the deputy minister. So I was mulling in my head whether I should also give the deputy minister a call. But I thought that was going to be an exercise in futility. Because, and the reason is that in the department we had a delegations of authority between the minister and the deputy minister. In the 7 SOEs that are within the portfolio of DPE, the minister had delegated the responsibility of the 3 SOEs to the deputy minister. And those SOEs was Alexco, Dinel, and Safcol. So I thought of, even if I give the chairperson, I give the deputy minister a call, he's not going to assist much because his delegation did not extend it to Eskom related matters. Although those delegations, they are limited in nature because they don't absolve minister from the full accountability in those SOEs that are delegated, because there will still be matters like your PFMA applications that would require the executive authority being the minister. But in this one, in my head, I was trying to think whether should I give the chairperson, the deputy minister a call to check with him if I should place, and how I should approach this call to the chairperson. Why I was reluctant about the call directly again to the chairperson was just at the beginning of that month, Feb, we had just done an induction to the board as the department. So Eskom will do its induction as an SOE to the new board, and we will do our own induction as the department. In our induction, that slide I referred to earlier on, that talks about the delineation, we had made it very clear that there's a step-in right, matters that the minister can step into, but they have triggers. So in my head, I was trying to think, if I'm going to call this chairperson that I've just inducted a few weeks ago and breach this governance gap myself, and I was already thinking the conversation I'm going to have with Mr. Tsotsi. So that's why there was a time lag I did not call the chairperson immediately, and I did not even call.
But
the
of course, even in terms of your own induction to the board, you didn't have to worry about that, because that induction also said that the interaction should be between the chairperson and the minister. It was a general rule to which there were exceptions.
Yes.
So you didn't have to worry about that.
The
And this was an exception. The minister was not there.
The concern was going to be in relating to the message itself, that the meeting should not take place. Because this is a board meeting. It is not a shareholder, it was not like a shareholder intervention matter that would have.
To the extent that you were concerned about the content of the message, that I understand. I was simply saying, I don't understand why you would have been concerned about you giving the chairperson a call in the context of the induction, where you told the board members that the minister communicates with the chairperson and the DG communicates with the CEO and so on, because it was accepted that there can be exceptional circumstances where something different happens.
Yes, indeed, chairperson. It was more in the messaging of the message that I'm conveying.
Yes.
It is against those governance that we had said to them, that because that was a board. It is a board meeting. It had nothing to do with the meeting of the department. It was something that was within the purview of the board.
Yes.
So that's the dilemma that I had, and hence I wanted to have a conversation. I was hoping that if I was successful to get hold of the minister, it will be the conversation I would have with the minister, so that then the minister can then be able, if I was successful to get hold of her, the minister can then impress upon the president the difficulty of the shareholder telling the board to postpone a board meeting, how it then puts us against our own
Yes, in terms of governance.
Yes.
Okay, but ultimately you called the chairperson.
Yes, I called the chairperson, and then I indicated to the chairperson, we exchanged the greetings as well, and I referred to him in Venek and Sotho to say, Mudula Stulo, meaning the chairperson. That's how I always referred to him. And I indicated to him that I'm aware that you have a meeting tomorrow. And then the chairperson indicated yes. And then I said to him, can you please move your meeting? And then the chairperson said, his response was immediate to me that no. And then he asked, why, Matsi? I indicated that the minister will call and will give you reasons, but the chairperson was very persistent in wanting the reasons. He actually stated to me that, Matsi, remember, this meeting has already been scheduled over a period of time with all the board members, and some of these board members, they are coming out of the province, not from Gauteng, all of them. So people are already here. As I said, it was in the evening. And then I indicated to the chairperson that, at the end, because he was adamant, he wanted to understand why, and he must move or postpone the meeting. Then I said to him, chairperson, this is very difficult. The president has requested that the meeting be postponed. And then that was the end of the call with Mr. Zuma.
So, is it fair to say you didn't want to tell him that the president had anything to do with this request unless you were pushed to a corner?
Yes, Chair, that is a fair statement. Actually, I do state in my affidavit that my intent was not to mention that the president requested.
But ultimately you told him that the president, did you say the president had called you and this request was coming from him?
It was coming from him, but the president indicated that minister will provide the reasons.
The reasons.
I
Yeah.
did inform Mr. Tsoti that the president indicated that the meeting be postponed, but minister will provide the reasons.
And, once we had told the chairperson that it's the president who had called to make this request, what was his response?
He just said, okay, and then we
Yeah,
ended
and that's
the
how the call,
Yes, yeah,
the conversation ended.
it ended.
Okay, Mr. Seleke.
Thank you, Chair. Did you have the opportunity to tell the minister about that call from the president and what you conveyed to Mr. Tsotsi?
Yes, a chairperson, as I indicated earlier on that it is a norm that when minister returns, then I would do a report, a feedback of some sort of matters that would have transpired during her absence. So indeed, I had an opportunity, again, we were in our Cape Town office. I then briefed the minister the first issue on the item on my list of issues to discuss with her was this call from the president. And I informed the minister that I had received this call and the president had requested that the meeting be postponed. And I also told minister what I have done. And I had a brief conversation with the minister, same governance that to say, minister, I even sent, they tried to call you, I even sent a message, and I was even saying to her how I was sweating because it was my first time receiving a call from the president, so I wanted to make sure that I do the right thing. And then the minister engaged on the other matters that were on the report. But on the issue of the call, she just said, she shrugged and just said, ish, Matsi, and we didn't have a conversation about that again.
Just repeat that, Ms. Mokholo. What was the minister's reaction? What did the minister say?
She just shrugged and said, ish, Matsi. And we didn't have a conversation. And so I would not know even whether she had the reasons from the president, whether she had a conversation with the chairperson, and that's where we left the conversation with her.
But I don't hear a certain part of what you're saying. Did she say you should not have had that conversation with the president, or did she say the two of you, that is yourself and the minister, didn't have this conversation about the president having called?
I reported, but her response was, Eish, Mazi. And then we didn't have any other conversation. It was not like, so what transpired after, Minister, did you speak to the chairperson? Did you speak to the president? And so I would be lying out if I say chairperson, there was a conversation. We didn't. She just said.
What was your understanding of what her attitude was towards the fact that the president had called and asked that the board meeting be postponed? What was your understanding of what her attitude was to this development?
Chair, this led me to believe that in my mind that either she knew what had transpired in her absence, or that she had already had that conversation either with the chairperson or with the president.
You didn't get the impression that she was wishing this development had not happened?
What it was very clear was that it was not a conversation that she was going to have with me.
Oh,
yes,
yeah, okay, all right. That's fair enough. So you had a difficult time when the president called and made this request, and you had a difficult time when you had to report to the minister about this call?
Yes, Chair, and I had a difficult time, a period subsequent to that. And maybe at the end, Chairperson, I would like to make a few remarks, because it has been a call that I have been asked in so many quarters to explain.
About that call?
Yes.
Is that so? Okay, all
yeah.
right. Well, if you choose to say something about that and other matters at the end, that's fine. But you may continue, Mr. Seleke.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Mokholo, how long after, from a day's time point of view, your call with the President, did you have this opportunity to report to the Minister?
Immediately on her return from the trip, which was few days.
A few days after?
A few days after, yes.
Yes.
Of course, did you hear either on the 26th or after that the board meeting was postponed?
Yes, subsequently I learned that,
Oh,
and I subsequently learned that the President called the chairperson, because even in my conversation, the chairperson did not mention that he had already received the call from the President. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And we understand from the evidence already presented to the Commission that the board had a meeting on the 9th of March after the meeting of the 26th had been cancelled or postponed. And it had this meeting as a reaction to the meetings Mr. Tsotsi had with the President and others at the President's residence in Durban, official residence in Durban. So the meeting of the 9th take place, and the board is told about what the President has asked Mr. Tsotsi to do and the board itself to do. That meeting was short-lived because no decisions were made and the board wanted to meet with the Minister. They were able to secure a meeting with the Minister 2 days later, on the 11th of March, 2015. The Minister did attend the meeting of the board. You have indicated or stated in your affidavit that you attended with the Minister. Could you explain to the chairperson how you got invited to that meeting?
So, Chairperson, I was contacted by Ms. Kim Davids, who was the Minister's personal assistant, because I received the call directly from the Minister requesting me to attend the meeting at Eskom with her. So I then contacted Ms. Davids to establish the purpose of the meeting, because normally there would be an agenda for the meeting. And also because I always want to go into this meeting prepared and to know what is going to be discussed, because normally when you attend a meeting with the Minister, you're also there, not only as an aid to her, but also to also provide a support and advice on matters. So I just wanted to know what was going to be discussed. So Ms. Davids informed me that the meeting was going to be with the board subcommittee of the people and governance. And so they are going to give some report to the Minister. And I then proceeded then to attend the meeting with the Minister the following day.
So just to understand, you are told that this meeting that is going to take place on the 11th of March 2015 is going to be with the subcommittee, the board subcommittee, not the board.
Not the full board.
They don't say to you it's the board.
Yes, no.
Okay, proceed.
And I think, Chairperson, it is important that why if it is the subcommittee of the board, similar to that protocol I spoke about, that the Minister will always interact with the chairperson, and if there are matters that the report is going to be made, the chairperson can bring 1 or 2 board members. For example, if we are going to discuss issues that relate to the finances, it could be the chairperson of the audit or audit and risk committee. So there would be those. So I was not really surprised when it was the meeting of when Ms. David says it's the meeting of the PNG, because we do meet with the subcommittees of the board when they give reports on the activities of the committees.
So are you saying those meetings will include the minister? If you're meeting with a subcommittee, it will include the minister?
Yes, there would be meetings where the minister can be invited. For example, as I'm saying, there would be a meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. They wanted to give a report. We receive annual, quarterly reports. So maybe they want to give quarterly report on the work of the Audit and Risk Committee. Then those meetings, they can happen. So the chairperson can bring other members of the committees of the board. But
please remember to face to the chairperson.
yes.
Yeah, just carry on. I think I'll ask you other questions as we go along. You are informed about this meeting, so you are invited to it. You are told by Kim Davis, is that the minister's PA?
PA, yes.
Okay. Is she telling you on the day of the meeting or the day before?
The evening when I called, immediately after receiving the call, when I asked her, is the documentation, is the agenda, is there something that I can read to prepare for the meeting? And then she indicates that, no, it's the meeting with the PNG committee.
Okay, so you're communicating with her the evening before?
Yes.
Take us to the day you go to the meet. The next day you go to the meeting?
Yes, so
Do you go with the minister or you meet with the minister at Eskom?
I drove, we drove separately. We met at Eskom.
Was the minister expecting you from your observation of her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Take us into the meeting.
Okay, so we get to Eskom, we are ushered to the boardroom, and then I notice as we enter that it's the full board that is present, not only the members of the PNG, including the executives. In this case, it was Mr. Matona and Ms. Mosilo Mothepu as the ex-official members of the board. And so then we entered the boardroom, then I sat next to the minister, and then the minister began, actually, we were sitting to address the meeting that there are bugs in the room, and that the boardroom should be swept before the meeting could begin. In this case, she was referring to that there could be surveillance devices, which would then allow other parties access to what is being discussed and what is transpiring at the meeting. So the minister was assured, I can't recall exactly who, I think whether it was the CEO or assured the minister that no, the room was clear and there were no bugs. And then we proceeded, Eskom proceeded by then to, in the standard norm, to call one of the executives to do the safety drill, an evacuation procedure, and they did that, and then the meeting began.
We understand from the evidence that prior to the minister and the board dealing with the issues for which the minister was called, that the executives were excused. Do you recall anything?
Yes, so, Chairperson, so firstly, maybe at the beginning, the minister started by talking to a few issues of the war room and the challenges that we're facing the war room at that point in time. Because I was also a member of the Eskom war room. Actually, I was the convener of the Eskom war room on behalf of the department, working together with the presidency. And so some of the issues that were then being discussed related to the issue of switching off the non-pay municipalities that were not servicing their Eskom account, the issues of the directors' liabilities. There was issues relating to the mishandling of load shedding by Eskom and its executive, and the sabotaging of Eskom power stations. So there were a lot of matters that we were sitting that that the minister started addressing also from her own speaking notes. So then I realized that these were really operational issues, if I may say that.
Sorry, Ms. Mokholo. Just before that, I was asking the question, we've heard from the evidence that before the minister and the board discussed the issues for which the minister was called for, that the executives were excused. Can you recall whether that took place?
Not immediately, they were not excused immediately.
Okay.
Yes.
I see.
Yes. Hence, I was saying there were a lot of operational matters. Minister started first by addressing the war room issues. So we did not shoot straight to have the executives excused. So it's at a later stage that then the executives were asked to be excused, and then Minister proceeded.
Yes. So at what stage? Are you at that stage now or not yet?
It was at the stage, so as the minister was, once minister has engaged on the war room challenges themselves, that's when the executives were asked to be excused.
Okay. Can you recall who's asking them to be excused? Or who asked them?
Minister asked that the executive be excused.
So what was further discussed in their absence?
Then there was the discussion that the executives, there would be a need to do a deep dive into Eskom. And so it may be necessary for the executive to be asked to step aside. And there were a few terms that were used to chairperson. Stepping aside, take garden leave, suspensions. So it was a mixture of terminologies that were being used. And there was also a discussion around if the executive are to step aside, who would act in their position. And I can't recall exactly at that particular point which board member was talking, but there was a discussion that took place while we were still there with the minister.
Well, was there a clear indication as to the executives that would be required to step aside or be suspended or take this forced leave? Well, in your recollection.
Yeah, no, not the names of the people, but there was a discussion around the challenges that Eskom was faced with during that time because of load shedding and the fact that there were concerns also coming from the war room that Eskom is not furnishing adequate information, the reliability of that information, and the state of the power stations at that point in time, the issues relating to Eskom finances, and the fact that we had just, as a matter of fact, we were working on a letter that we had received from Eskom indicating that they may be requiring further equity injection. So, but we did not discuss that, the names of the people in particular.
See. Well, I think that evidence has been established before the chairperson. It's interesting that you say the minister mentioned issues of mishandling of load shedding and sabotaging of power stations. Did you understand what she meant about that?
To the extent that I was part of the war room, I understood that because of load shedding, as there was a view coming from certain quarters that this load shedding could be orchestrated, and so there's a sabotage taking place at Eskom. So it's manufactured, is not as purely by the state of the infrastructure or operational reasons. So to the extent that there had been those kind of discussions previously, I read sabotage to mean something like that.
And she's now communicating with the board about this,
Yes.
and the board is engaging with her on this. Do you recall whether the board, or at least some members of, because most of them are new, at least 2 have been there before, do you recall whether there's confirmation that, yes, we also suspect there's sabotage, or that we know there is sabotage?
I would not say there was a yes or no, but there was the nodings, and then there was concurrence in terms of some of the other discussions, for example, to say some of the board members indicating that, yes, Minister, we are aware, and there's a credibility issue on us as the board if these matters are not being handled swiftly, and also they themselves, with the concerns that some of the board members indicated they are having with the quality of the report that would come from the executives. And Chairperson, maybe it's important also to mention that this meeting came at the back of a war room meeting that we had a few days ago, and Eskom had actually made a presentation in the war room at the IMC, and where the CEO was indicating the plans that they are putting in place, how to deal with load shedding, how to deal with all the finances and all of that. So, in my view, sitting there, I was really of the view that if we in the war room had been made and we had received that presentation, at some point, surely the board should have been also briefed on the same information, because this was the presentation that was made at the IMC level.
Well, you know, now that you've mentioned this, that the meeting came against the backdrop of a meeting you had a few days before of the war room. The minister's version seems to convey in her affidavit, which you have been provided with, seems to convey the impression that on that day, on the 11th of March 2015, she was in fact coming from a war room meeting, which she was unpleasant about. And she had to go to this meeting of Eskom.
It would not have been, Chairperson, on the same day. It would not have been on the 11th. So, if you allow me, Chairperson, just maybe to, in few sentences, to explain how the war room worked. The war room was made of 3 layers, if I may say. You had the technical level, which was made of us, the technocrats. Then you had what we called the strategic level, which would be the ministers. So the ministers in this case would be the Minister of Public Enterprises and the Minister of Energy, policy departments that are relevant, National Treasury, and others. Then the 3rd layer would be the Interministerial Committee, which was chaired by the Deputy President. And so what would happen is that at the technical level, we would sit with the Eskom executives to prepare for the 2 tiers, to prepare for the strategic level and the IMC. And then we would then make comments on the Eskom presentation, how it should be strengthened, issues that may come from the ministers as we go to the next level. And then the ministers, once they have been briefed as well, they will make their own comments in preparation now of the IMC, which will be chaired by the Deputy President. So the technical meetings, we held them every Friday morning with no fail, 7 o'clock at the Union Building, every Friday. And then there would be the precursors to the meeting of the ministers, and then the meeting of the ministers would then lead to the meeting of the IMC. The IMC that we had prior to this meeting of the 11th of March was the IMC that we had the week before. I think it was in Cape Town on Tuesday. Because I remember it was in Cape Town at the boardroom of the deputy president there. So it would not have been, Chair, on the same day, the war room.
Yes. Well, you will recall from her affidavit, the minister is saying, Chairperson, just to read from her affidavit, on 11 March 2015, 11 March 2015 was a Wednesday, she says. I had attended another frustrating war room meeting. From there, my team, being the then acting DG of the Department of Public Enterprises and other officials, and I dashed to Eskom board meeting, which was already in progress. That's the acting Director General, that would be you.
Yes, it will be me, Chairperson.
And she says, and other officials. Were there other officials with you in that meeting?
No, the meeting of the 11th.
The meeting on the 11th of March?
No, no, I was the only official from
At
the
Eskom.
department that attended.
So you are saying there would not have been a war room meeting on that day?
No, Chairperson, there would not have been a war room. The meeting of the 11th was in the morning. So we would not.
Yeah, it would have been around 9 o'clock, if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken.
Yes. So if we had the war rooms, they would have been at large of that. Yes. And as I said, the request for me to attend the meeting, I received it from the minister the night before about the meeting. So there would not have been a war room. I think probably it's the confusion of the dates.
Yeah.
When reference was made to a meeting of the war room, would that mean all the three layers that you talked about of the war room? In other words, if she said she had been at a war room meeting, would she be talking about all these three layers, the technocrats, the strategic leadership, and the committee that was led by the deputy president? Or could she talk about having been to a war room meeting, even if she was speaking simply about a meeting of those who were at strategic level, namely the ministers?
If there would have been a war room, then it would have been a strategic one. But I would have attended that war room meeting with her. As I said, that I was the co-convener of the war room for the department. So
Yes. If it was a meeting of the whole war room, you would have attended there as well. If it was a meeting of the whole war room, all the three layers, isn't it? You would have been expected to be there as well.
on all the three layers, I would.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it was a meeting only of those who were at strategic level, namely the ministers, would you ordinarily have accompanied the minister to such a meeting or not necessarily?
I would also still be a part of that
You
meeting
would be
because
part of the
yes,
that.
because
Yes.
at the technical level,
Yeah.
it's us who are presenting to the ministers.
She would depend on you for technical support.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the technical team, the entire technical team is us. We are presenting to the ministers
Ministers.
together with Eskom.
Oh.
And then the ministers will take that presentation. If they endorse the contents or if they make a edits, then it will go to the next tier. So on
Okay.
both, the first tier minister will not make part of it because it's only us at the technical level, the officials. But at the strategic and the IMC, both meetings I would be.
So is your evidence that since you know that you didn't attend any war room meeting that morning, the minister is probably mistaken about having been to a war room meeting before going to the Eskom board meeting?
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Insofar, Ms. Mokholo, you say the minister talked about the issues at the war room and Eskom not furnishing correct information. Are you able to say anything about that? Because you are the co-convener of the war room, you say, at Eskom. You attend, as you have just said, all the meetings of the 3 tiers of the war room. You would have been at the core of the functionings of the war room. What do you say about that comment?
Yes, Chairpersons, there were areas of concerns, and there were times indeed where members of the war room complained about the quality of information that was coming from Eskom. For example, Eskom would indicate that there would be no load shedding, and all of a sudden you are informed that we're going into stage 2, we're going to stage 3. There was a time Eskom would indicate that they have sufficient money for diesel, and in 2 days' time, we receive a letter from Eskom that says we're running out of money. There would be time when Eskom would give assurance that there's still enough supply of coal, and then in a few days' time, you are told that there's issues or challenges relating to coal. So there were incidences and times when indeed the information, we would, as members of the war room and even at the technical level, would have concerns about the information. But the essence of the Friday meetings was precisely to deal with those at the technical level, so that we are then able to get the status quo of Eskom, because it was based on the 5-point plan. So we would do a dashboard of looking at the issues precisely so that then we can try to address this whole issue that there's lack of information, and then we can assist the Eskom executives in time prior to going to the strategic meeting and going to the IMC on the issues of information.
Before you and the minister went to the Eskom meeting on the 11th, had the two of you not have any prior meeting to talk about what was going to be discussed at the Eskom meeting?
At this meeting of the 11th?
I'm talking about the meeting of the minister with the board of Eskom on the 11th, on the morning of the 11th of March, 2015. The question is whether prior to the two of you attending that meeting, the two of you had a meeting to discuss what was to be discussed at the meeting with the board.
No, Chairperson, we didn't have that the opportunity. As I indicated, I was informed by the minister of the meeting the night before, the 11th, and when I inquired from the PA around what would be the issues to be discussed or the agenda, we were going to receive a report from the PNG. So there was no conversation or an opportunity even to have a conversation with the minister around the meeting of the 11th.
Okay. Let's go to the actual meeting at Eskom between the minister and the board. Evidence has been led that the minister identified 4 areas or portfolios at Eskom that needed to be subjected to an inquiry. Is that your recollection as well?
Yes, Chairperson, it will be my recollection. I tried to have my handwritten notes also attached to my affidavit because I was trying to take notes as the issues were being discussed.
Yes.
Yes. So.
Have you got your notes? Do you know where they are? They the ones at page 442, black numbers 442?
Yes, Chairperson, that will be those ones.
Oh,
yeah. Yes.
Okay. What are you saying to the question that I've just asked? Is that your recollection as well, or do you need to look at your notes?
Yes, that will be my recollection as well, and also looking at my notes, Chairperson, because, as I say, it was not a structured meeting from my point of view. It was a meeting that maybe I used in my affidavit the word ambushed, that I went in, so as Minister was talking, I was making notes of what was coming, and as the board members were talking, I was making notes. But insofar as the areas, yes, there was the issues that I would say that the evidence that was led, it is correct that Minister mentioned those areas in addition to the investigation by the War Room, which has the concerns that has now led to this deep dive, and then the issue of the stepping aside of the executives or garden leave or suspensions, and the areas that would need the board would need to pay focus on.
The areas that were to be investigated were 4, is that correct?
Chairperson, in my notes, I wrote a whole lot, so they could be covered. I would not say specifically I was writing
You would not
these
recall.
4 areas,
Yes,
but I was just
okay.
making notes as the minister was making
Yes.
her address. Yes.
Yes. Well, there was evidence that the minister said to the board that she couldn't instruct the board what to do or what decisions to make. And there was evidence before this commission to the effect that although the minister said that it was quite clear, or it was, one could read between the lines that the minister wanted the executives, the relevant executives, to be suspended. Would you say that's a fair understanding of the interaction between the minister and the board on that occasion?
Yes, Chairperson, and in my affidavit, I do allude to that as well to say, hence the words that were used was that the executives, they should take garden leave, they should step aside, should be suspended. So the understanding was that, yes, something must happen during the deep dive, but they should not be there. Whether they step aside and those are the issues that the board would have to deal with, whether they are being suspended or they take a garden leave to allow the deep dive. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Seleke.
Thank you, Chair. Insofar, Ms. Mokholo, as you say that you were attending all the meetings of the war room, whichever level or tier it was, can you recall how often did Minister Lynn Brown attend? The meetings where either the ministers were required to attend or where she was required to attend?
Frequently, Chairperson, the Eskom war room was the main focus of what Cabinet had given the department as a mandate. So, hence the minister was the chairperson of this strategic tier. And then I would be the co-convener together with the presidency, because the meetings were taking place in the presidency, and to give it even impetus, hence the decision was taken that the deputy president would lead the war room and then the IMC. So the minister would attend frequently because it was part of her core function as the shareholder minister responsible for DPE. So she would attend the meetings frequently.
So she was a regular attendee?
Yes.
Would you say that? Or she attended every meeting or some meetings?
Some meetings it would not be. There would be times when she's not able to attend, but it will be on a regular basis. As I say, given the mandate that it was our mandate as the department.
Yeah. Now, looking at the contents of what was being discussed with the minister, which you have said are operational issues of Eskom, is that normally what would the board do? Discuss operational issues with the minister, the shareholder representative?
No, Chairperson. In the meeting, as the meeting proceeded, I listened, and when I realized that indeed some of these issues are matters that actually the board could deliberate on, and then decide and make a proper resolution and a report to the minister. There's no need, you don't need a shareholder when you're discussing that kind of detail. I noted that, and I made a note to the minister also indicating that fact that the issues that are being discussed in this meeting are way too operational. So both of us, myself and her, should not be in the meeting. I made that a note twice to the minister to that effect, as a matter of fact, to say, maybe let's excuse ourselves, we need to leave because the issues that are being discussed are way too operational for us. And even the suspension of executives, it's a matter that the board must deal with and then just come to the shareholder, because minister, in a way, does not appoint executives. Ministers' powers of appointment is limited to the ex officio members of the board, which is the CEO and the CFO. And even in those circumstances, and in the past, even given the other experience, how we dealt with other SOEs, the board would be the one that goes through the process, and then they would pass a resolution, they will table it to the minister, and then minister then can deliberate on. So I did indicate that to the minister in the meeting.
And what was the minister's reaction to you?
The first note that I handed to the minister looked at it, read it, and nodded to me as I handed over, because she was on the podium. But she continued to proceed and engage with the board on the trajectory of the war room issues. Again, that there must be an investigation or a deep dive into all of those issues, including the affairs of the Eskom and the executives. So as the conversation ensued, I made a second note to the minister, and then, the conversation continued. It was later now, then I raised my hand to request an opportunity to speak as the engagements were going on. And I was afforded that opportunity. Then I addressed the minister and the board. I indicated that I don't think it's proper for us to be sitting and listening to matters that are really operational, that the board must be dealing with, that the board must be seized with. And what the board must do, they must deliberate on their own, make their own report, table it to the minister, and then the minister can then engage us as her officials to say, how do we approach the issues? But there's no way we could be sitting and discussing operational matters. And then at that point, then the minister indicated that Matsi is correct, Matsi is right. The board must deliberate on all the issues that I have raised. However, I would hang around and then wait feedback from the chairperson.
Would it be a fair comment, given the operational nature of the matters that the minister was discussing with the board, as you have said? Would it be fair comment to say, when the minister said that after leaving the board, the meeting, she would hang around, that in effect she was meaning that she would still be around to give guidance or advice in case the board needed to talk to him about some of these issues?
Well, Chair, it would be fair. However, it would be also difficult in a sense that, given the magnitude of the issues, you would want to give that board time to deliberate. And then they must do a proper report to her, because on the basis of what the board is presenting to the minister, then she would be able to act. So when I raised that point in the meeting, I was not expecting that we would get that report on the same day. It was, now that we heard what the board is saying, what minister has put it to the board, they can deliberate, look at all the permutations, make a proper report, and then only then the minister can have something in writing that she can say the board deliberated, these were the issues that they looked into, these were the pros and cons of each and every decision that they are taking. And then only on that, then she can act. When we left that meeting with the minister, the chairperson walked us out. And we debriefed at the coffee station. Eskom has it's like a holding room of some sort where the guests are received, the minister is received. We went there, myself, the chairperson and the minister, to debrief. Even in that debrief, I indicated that even to the chairperson and the minister, that the minister must get a report. I said, Minister, you need to be given favored with a report from the board. It was only on the basis of a written report. Minister then should be able to say, what were the issues that the board were canvassing, and where do I come in as the shareholder?
But having said all of that, you do say it would be fair comment to say that what I've said.
Yes, I'm saying, Chairperson, it would be fair when you're saying looking at the magnitude of the issues, but the fact that the minister would sit at Eskom wait for the report itself, that's why I'm saying, for me, it will not be, it does not sound reasonable, because you still have to allow that same board to deliberate.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, it goes back to what your concern was as the meeting was going on, namely that the minister was involving herself in operational issues. That was your concern, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why you kept on giving her notes to say, let's leave.
Yes.
And she was not disagreeing with you that you should leave.
Yes.
Because I think you say in your affidavit, she was nodding that these are not the types of issues that you know should be discussed in your presence, in the minister's presence. She should not be participating in that. But obviously, when she said she would hang around for some time, if that hanging around was meant to enable further interaction between herself and the board, it could only have been intended to be an interaction between herself and the board on the issues that had been discussed at the meeting.
Yes.
It couldn't have been something
Yes.
else, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Seleke.
Thank you, Chair. And the minister says she will hang around. Tell us what happens. What does the minister do after that? Where do you go after that, as you leave the meeting?
Yes, after those few minutes debrief.
Or maybe before that, I'm sorry, Mr. Seleke.
Yes, Chair.
At the meeting between the minister and the board, when the issue of the suspensions of the executives was discussed, as you say, they used different terms interchangeably, suspension or step aside or special leave. When it was discussed, were names of the affected executives mentioned?
No, not Chairperson.
The names were not mentioned.
No, names were not mentioned.
But it was understood that the officials who would need to step aside or to be suspended were the executives who were heads of the particular portfolios that were going to be subjected to an inquiry.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, Chairperson.
all right.
And these were the same people that were part of our team at the technical level.
In the war
at the
room.
war room.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So the question was, the minister says, I will hang around to the board, and if you need further discussion, I'm around. What exactly happens as you leave the board meeting? Where do you go?
So I left the holding room. I went back to the office. I left minister at Eskom. At some point, actually, when we were in the holding room, there was whether minister will still stay physically at Eskom or she will go by to the next center around. So, but she would be around. But I left her at Eskom.
So you left the minister at Eskom.
Yes.
So she actually literally hanged around at Eskom.
Yes, Chairperson.
Yeah.
You are not prepared to do that.
No, Chairperson, there was a lot of work as an acting DG in the office.
Now, Ms. Mokholo, is this also the way the minister was invited to the meeting? You and the minister. Is that the normal way in which the minister would be invited to a board meeting?
No, Chairperson, there's two main types of board meetings that minister would engage with the SOEs on. The first one, obviously, is your annual general meeting. It's a prescribed meeting in terms of the Companies Act. We've covered it in detail in terms of explaining it in the MOIs with all the state-owned companies. And actually, it's a process that is, we choreograph that practice to the T in the department. The second meeting, so the first meeting of the annual general meetings where all the strategic issues now are being discussed, the strategic intent, minister's plan with the SOE for the year, and matters that she would have observed in the year under review, and what the board could do in the new year, or if there's changes of the board, that's where those changes and will be announced. So it's a serious meeting. The second one that is also provided for is a statutory meeting is the special general meeting. This is to cater for those meetings that are not your annual general meeting, but you could have urgent matters that the board would need to bring to minister's attention and they cannot wait for the annual general meeting. For example, if the board wanted to, they have concerns relating to one of their own, and they want one of their board members to be removed. That could fall under special general meeting because then there would have to be a process of resolutions and all of that. If there's a serious matter that relates to the conduct of one of the executives, or there's a serious operational matter that has serious implications to the entity and even to government that could not wait for the annual general meeting, then those would fall under the special general meeting. So if it's a special then general meeting, there is a procedure for those. There would be a request coming from through the company secretary if it's meeting is triggered by the company. If it's triggered by us, it will be us preparing a resolution for the minister to the board, a shareholder resolution calling for a special general meeting. In terms of the Companies Act, then in the special general meeting, you must, in the resolution, give the agenda on the issues that are going to be discussed. So those are those are the two meetings where minister engages the full board. The other meetings that could happen, minister then will engage, as I indicated earlier on, that there is a matter on a financial matter that the chairperson wants to bring to the attention of the minister. They will bring the CEO and the CFO and maybe one a board member, maybe the chairperson of audit and risk, or the chairperson of social and ethics. So those just will be those kind of meetings that are just being requested. So this particular one on the 11th is very difficult for me. I could not put it as an annual general meeting. It did not meet the requirements. It was not a special general meeting because it was not triggered from my side or from our side as a department, minister wanting to discuss certain things with the board. It was not triggered by the company secretary requesting it through the SGM. So it was one of those meetings.
Thank you.
Mr. Seleke.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, and I will move on to the next point. I see that from paragraph 48 of your
We
affidavit.
are at 7 minutes to 1.
Yes, Chair.
I take it that we are at the tail end.
We're nearing the end, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Page 431. Just quickly on that, I will read from the affidavit that you say the PNG committee member, you've corrected the name to be Venita, Ms. Venita Klein, began by giving a report that on the work that was mandated to the subcommittee that there needs to be an investigation around the affairs of Eskom, and she proceeded with details. As discussions were proceeding, I sent the minister a second note which stated we should leave. And so you go into that. So you recall Ms. Venita Klein addressing the meeting about the investigation?
Yes, Chairperson. So before, and hence I said earlier, I was not perturbed when Ms. David said they were meeting the PNG. There were a lot of matters that this committee, they were dealing with around the executives, not only these executives that were in the war room, but other executives or prescribed officers in Eskom that they were dealing with. So there was a lot of contestation among certain executives. So she started also talking about the work of what the people in governance doing around, just cleaning up the governance within Eskom. Yes, yeah.
So just two aspects I want you to address the chairperson on. The one which you deal with in your affidavit is the secondment of Mr. Brown Mullifer from Transnet to Eskom, the secondment of Mr. Arnold Singh as well from Transnet to Eskom. Just briefly explain to the chairperson or relate to the chairperson what you know about the secondment firstly of Mr. Brown Mullifer and how it came about.
Yes, so Chairperson, I can't remember the exact date, but I know it was around between March 2015 and April 2015. I was requested by the minister to accompany her to a meeting at Eskom. And the meeting was to deal with the secondment of Mr. Mullifer.
Did you know that beforehand?
I did not know that beforehand. I learned that on my way to the meeting.
And how
Sorry,
did you
what
learn?
did you not know beforehand?
That the meeting at Eskom was going to discuss the secondment.
What it was going to discuss?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. I learned that on my way to the meeting. Actually, the minister is the one that informed me.
The minister is the one who informed you?
Yes.
Were you with the minister in the car or are you again driving separately?
No, we traveled separately.
You traveled separately?
Yes.
So you say you learned about it on the way, so how did you learn? Did she telephone you?
Yes, Minister telephoned and requested that she is meeting with the chairperson at Eskom. Actually, she's meeting with both chairpersons at Eskom, and then she would like me to accompany her to the meeting. And then on the way, she called to indicate that she's going to be there earlier than me, and the meeting is going to take place at the chairperson's office. And is to discuss the transfer, the secondment of Mr. Mullifer to Eskom. We had a brief discussion around because the challenges. He was saying, Eskom is giving me grey hair, and really I need to sort out the issues. We need leadership in that entity, and so. And then I said, Minister, I would join the meeting as soon as I get there.
And who's the chairperson at this time?
It was Dr. Ngumane, was now the acting chairperson at that point.
Of the Eskom board.
Of Eskom board, yes. Yeah.
Let's go into the meeting.
And then in the meeting, we were joined by Mr. Zitembe Koza, who was by then now the acting CEO, as well as the chairperson of Transnet, Ms. Linda Mabaso. And then, of course, it was myself present together with the minister. Mr. Dlamini, who was in the office of the chair at that point, came into the meeting but was not part of the meeting. So there were no formal recordings or minutes being taken. Everybody was taking their own notes.
And
what transpired at this meeting about the secondment of Mr. Mullifer?
Yes, and then the chairperson, the acting chairperson, Dr. Ngubane, is the one that opened the meeting by indicating that the Eskom, they wanted to check with the minister the feasibility and doability of seconding Mr. Mullifer from Transnet to Eskom, and hence both the chairpersons are there. Then minister indicated that the reason she has asked me to join the meeting was not only because I was the acting DG, but also from my role as the DDG responsible for legal governance and risk to be able to advise the board in terms of what are the things that must be looked into if the secondment is to be considered. So, and then in that meeting, Dr. Ngubale indicated that Mr. Mullifer is really touted as the ideal candidate because of this is going to be a temporary position while the board is embarking on a selection and the recruitment process for a permanent CEO, because Minister had written to the board prior to say they must start looking at the strengthening leadership within the company. Now, the proposal then was supported by the Transnet chairperson, because both chairpersons then agreed that Mr. Mullifer was a perfect technocrat for the position, given his stature and gravitas in the marketplace, his relationship with the banking sector, his past experience, including having been a senior official at National Treasury, and his role with the PIC. And also to the reputation that he has built at Transnet, that within a short space of time, he has been able to build good relationships with Transnet and its other stakeholders. So those were some of the reasons that were put why him.
So, sorry, Ms. Mokholo, you want to carry on? I just want to ask you, but don't forget, did it appear to you in that meeting whether or not the persons in the meeting were discussing this issue for the first time?
No, Chairperson, it didn't come out. As a matter of fact, it was clear that at least the two chairpersons, they have had this conversation before. And I think then they did try it prior at the meeting to raise it with the minister, hence the meeting was requested. Because in the meeting, Minister, when she introduced my attendance as well, was we would need to look at the doability from whether we needed to, is it a matter that would require us to go to cabinet or not? But also Mr. Mullifer had a contract with Transnet that was due to terminate in a year and few months' time. And Mr. Matona by then, and this was when I was given the opportunity just to then express my view in terms of the proposal, that what the two boards would need to do from the governance side is that they must engage as the boards, because there would have to be resolutions that would have to be drafted for consensus. But also some of the issues they need to take into account includes the fact that, yes, Mr. Mullifer's contract has a year and a couple of months to run with Transnet. But Mr. Matona is still suspended with full packs. So for purpose of PFMA and fruitless and wasteful and irregular expenditure, it's something that the boards would have to look into, because you're going to be still paying him and you're going to be bringing somebody to act. And if you're going to be paying the acting allowance, you will be paying two people. But also the boards must look into Transnet itself, who's going to act in Transnet. And to that end, it was responded, Ms. Mabas responded that the good thing with Transnet is that it does not have challenges like Eskom, in the sense that there's many divisional executives at Transnet that could step in the acting position. Then one issue was maybe we need to look at the issue of the remuneration. We could consider Transnet continuing to pay Mr. Mullifer's salary, even if he's seconded at Eskom. But that needs then to be considered carefully, because if you're going to bring somebody to act in Mr. Mullifer's position as the CEO at Transnet, it's additional responsibility for that divisional CEO. So they would need to be paid an acting allowance as well. So you're going to Transnet cannot pay the money when services are rendered somewhere else, and at the same time they are paying somebody. So there were all these dynamics that we requested that the two boards then would have to sit, look at all those, and then debate, and then put a proposition then that can be considered by the department.
Yeah, so the rest is history, because then on the 17th of April, 2015, the minister did announce her decision to second Mr. Mullifer to Eskom. You were present at that conference.
Yes, at the press conference I was.
That took place at Eskom.
It took place at Eskom.
And how you also state how Mr. Anod Singh got to be seconded to Transnet. We could just read paragraph 69 of your affidavit.
Yes, so it was immediately once Mr. Mullifer came through, one of the major challenges that Eskom was facing, as we all know by then, was the precarious financial position. And they were actually, Eskom was working on submitting a request to the Minister of Finance and our minister, so it will be to the minister, but with the concurrence of the Minister of Finance, for an equity injection. And that requires an appropriation bill. So then the chairperson indicated that having discussed with Mr. Mullifer believes that he needs somebody with a firm hand on the finances, and the person that he believes can help him navigate this process at Eskom is Mr. Singh. And that's how Mr. Singh then was also recommended to come over to assist.
Was Mr. Mullifer's motivation for Mr. Singh to be brought to Eskom in writing?
The letter that was from the chairperson, but in the conversation with the chairperson and the minister, it was that Mr. Mullifer feels that having looked at all the financial challenges, he feels that the current team that he has would need to be augmented, and Mr. Singh can do it.
So there was a letter from the
Chairperson.
acting chairperson or chairperson of the Eskom board to the minister, Minister Lynn Brown,
Yes.
asking that Mr. Anoj Singh be seconded to Eskom in the position of financial director or CFO. But in some conversation, you understood that the actual person who put Mr. Anoj Singh's name forward was Mr. Mullifer.
Yes, Chairperson, because he had done the scanning of the landscape financially
Yes.
as the acting CEO now.
Yes.
And his reasoning was that he would have to be supported by somebody who's a bit stronger financially if he's to do this application, the appropriation, and all of that, and work on the Eskom finance.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Chairperson, that concludes the issues in her affidavit. I should just point out to the chairperson that there's an issue not contained there which Ms. Mokholo has agreed to provide us a supplementary affidavit on. It arises from a handover report to the minister and it alludes to the investigation that had taken place at Transnet in regard to what I have considered is of interest to the Commission regarding irregularities there. Regarding irregularities in the acquisition of certain transactions. She can't testify about it now, but she will do an affidavit, and maybe in due course we could call her to do so.
Okay, okay.
Other than that, that's the end.
Just before I know that you wanted to say something towards the end. I'll give you that chance. But before that, you were acting DG from September 2014 up to September 2015.
Yes, Chairperson.
Is that right? But apart from the time that you were acting DG, you were basically part of the senior management of the department for a number of years.
Yes, Chairperson.
At DDG level.
DDG level.
Yes. Now, did you at any stage prior to 2015 or during 2015 or even 2016 have occasion to meet with Mr. Salim Essa?
No, Chairperson.
Did you hear of him within the department at any stage?
Yes, Chairperson. As a matter of fact, Chairperson, there's another work stream of the commission that have asked that I depose an affidavit that talks to the board appointment processes. So I came across Mr. Essa at first when he was nominated at first for an Eskom board in 2012, but subsequently he was not appointed, but he was appointed to another SOE to broadband in Faku. So that's when I came to know of his name.
Oh, so you say there is an affidavit in which you deal with your interactions with him?
Not his interactions with him, but
his interactions with the department.
With the department and how he was
that
appointed.
you became aware of.
Yes, and appointed, how he was appointed into one of the board of the SOE then.
I haven't seen that affidavit. Do you know about it?
She has told me about the affidavit, Chair.
But you don't have it?
I don't have it here with me. I don't have it here with me currently.
Yeah, because to the extent that she might have knowledge of certain matters relating to Mr. Salim Essa, those may be important. Do you have a recollection of how long that affidavit is?
It's quite long, Chairperson. I think it's about 40 pages or so.
So it's quite extensive.
Yes, it's extensive. It's just at the final stages of being...
Or it's still being prepared?
Yes, they've been with the other work stream, but it's...
Or you have not delivered it to the commission yet?
Yeah, not yet, Chairperson.
Oh, okay. Which work stream? Is it this work stream that is working with you on that, or that has requested it, or is it another work stream of the commission?
It's another work stream of the commission.
Transnet?
It deals with the board appointment.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Mr. Seleke,
Yes.
will you liaise with whoever? Let's establish who in the commission has requested it, because I was going to have some questions for her, but if she is preparing an affidavit that deals with these matters, I would rather see the affidavit first, so that as soon as it has arrived, I could have a look. So probably you would need to come back to the commission to deal with those matters.
Yes, Chairperson, I've been informed. So.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I'm not going to ask you any further questions about Mr. Salim Essa, but I want to give you now the opportunity to say something, because you wanted to say something, because you said everybody is asking you about this telephone call that you received from Mr. Zuma.
Yes, Chairperson. It has been almost 6 years now since the event of 2015 when I started acting, including the matters that relates to the suspension of the executives. And I went, as the evidence has been led, went into a meeting, Chairperson, of the board to go and support the minister. Little would I know, Chairperson, that we'll work out of a meeting in a few minutes' time. People's lives would have been turned and changed massively, mine included, because subsequent to that, I had to explain to a lot of people what role did I play in having then Marokane, Mr. Madonna, Mr. Mullifer being fired from their work. And I couldn't give those answers to date, Chairperson, because I went into literally what I believed it was going to be a meeting, and it turned out that it led to other events. But I remain grateful to Mr. Madonna and Mr. Marokane in particular, that even Ms. Mullifer, when I explained to them subsequently that, because the question would always be, even from my parents, that what happened? What role did you play in having these people fired? So they understood and they accepted my explanation that I went into a meeting that I did not know that we were going to discuss the suspension and all of that. Understanding governance the way I understood, I would have advised differently in terms of how the matters could have been dealt with. The same goes with the telephone call, Chairperson. And most of the DGs, because as the acting DG, I was not only the convener of the war room, but also the coordinator of the outcome 6 for the economic cluster. I was the co-chairperson of the cluster. So I have had to field a lot of questions around the role, my role and the governance. And to the extent that there has been a perception that says I'm not a diligent public servant, I have aided capture by working with the ministers who are seen to have been the architect of capture, and it changed my own life as well. I've lost friends along the way. It has made my life very difficult. Other people, they've been candid enough to explain why they had to distance themselves from me because of the belief that there was no way I could be so close to the falls and still remain dry. So I'm hoping with this process, Chairperson, that we would be able to get to some of the answers that even myself, I could be able to understand, but really transpired. But it is not only those executives that their life changed. Some of us also, our lives was affected, and in a way that we're still living with those repercussions today. Thanks, Chairperson.
Okay. I know that I said I wasn't going to ask you any further questions about Mr. Salim Essa because your affidavit is coming, but I've decided to ask you anyway, not many, but one or two. Do you know whether during 2015 there were any interactions between Minister Lynn Brown and Mr. Salim Essa?
Not formally, Chairperson. Yeah, not formally.
Well, when you say not formally, it gives the impression you say maybe you know informal interactions.
Yes, I've heard that. I know that sometimes in the minister's office through the PA, there was some kind of either it's whether telephone conversations or what there was some kind of, maybe let's say a relationship, but I would not know the extent of the relationship.
Yes. You see, when one talks about the suspensions of the executives at Eskom on the 11th of March 2015, one of the issues that is quite intriguing is the inclusion of Ms. Mullifer among the executives who were to be suspended. As you remember, she was the financial director of Eskom at the time. So the financial portfolio, financial department at Eskom was included among the portfolios that the minister said at the board meeting on the 11th of March needed to be the subject of an inquiry. You remember that? You see, the evidence that I've had is that on the 8th of March 2015, there was a meeting in Durban at Mr. Zuma's official residence. And that meeting was attended by Mr. Tsotsi, Mr. Dumieni. There were two meetings actually. The first one was attended by Mr. Tsotsi, Mr. Dumieni, and Mr. Linnell. And Mr. Jabu Maswangai. And, well, it has been said that Mr. Dumieni's son was also there, but he was not participating in the meeting, but he was there. And at that meeting, there was a discussion of the suspension of executives at Eskom. But at that stage, it was only 3 portfolios and they did not include Ms. Mullefer's portfolio, the finance. Then there was another meeting after that one, and in the same venue, same day, which was attended by Mr. Zuma with the same people that I've mentioned for the earlier meeting. And that there too, the discussion about the suspension of executives related to 3 portfolios, and therefore 3 executives to be suspended. And Ms. Mullefer's portfolio was not included. That's on the 8th. Then it's the 9th. Then it's the 10th. But on the 11th, it would appear, the evidence seems to suggest that it was the minister who, in talking to the board on the 11th, talked about 4 portfolios instead of 3. And she included Ms. Mullefer's portfolio. And therefore, in terms of the principle that was followed, she would need to be suspended too, because her portfolio would be the subject of the inquiry. Then there is evidence that on the 10th of March, that is now the day before the 11th, Mr. Koko, Machala Koko from Eskom, had 2 meetings at Melrose Arch at certain offices. One involved himself, Mr. Abraham Masango, who was from Eskom, and Mr. Salim Essa. Another one involved Mr. Koko, Mr. Salim Essa, and Ms. Daniels at Melrose Arch on the same day, but separately. Now, if I recall correctly, both Ms. Daniels and Mr. Masango say that the discussion which took place, or what they were told either by Mr. Koko or Mr. Salim Essa, separately, was that there were 4 executives to be suspended. And then on the 11th, the minister speaks about 4 portfolios. But one of the 2, namely either Mr. Masango or Ms. Daniels, I think it is Mr. Masango, if I'm not mistaken, says that Mr. Salim Essa either introduced himself.
That's Ms. Daniels.
If I'm not mistaken.
He's to Ms. Daniels.
Is it Ms. Daniels?
It is Ms. Daniels. Yes.
Oh, Ms. Daniels. Said Mr. Salim Essa introduced himself as an advisor to Minister Brown. Now, Mr. Koko has denied that there were such 2 meetings involving him. But if it is true that those meetings did take place, then there is this issue that at the Durban meeting, only 3 executives were contemplated as executives who would be suspended. The earliest we hear about 4 being suspended seems to be on the 10th in these meetings that Mr. Salim Essa or Mr. Koko had with Ms. Daniels and with Mr. Abraham Masango separately. And then the minister comes the following day, also talks about 4. It seems rather strange. So that is why I was asking whether you were aware of any interactions between the Minister Brown, and Mr. Salim Essa around that time?
No, definitely not, Chairperson. What I can even confirm is that at least I know, having worked in the department even before Minister appointed me acting DG, she had 4 advisors at any particular point in time, others leaving. Mr. Essa was not
one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, you see, Ms. Mullifer, there is evidence to the fact that prior to this, namely March 2015, much earlier when the CEO of, or acting CEO of Eskom was Mr. or Dr. Machila.
Yes, Colin Machila.
Yes, Colin Machila. That she had had interactions with Mr. Salim Essa in meetings where Mr. Colin Machila had, I think, arranged to have meetings with Mr. Salim Essa, or Mr. Salim Essa had come to whatever meetings with Mr. Machila, and Ms. Mullifer was there. And Ms. Mullifer had resisted the awarding of a certain contract to Mr. Salim Essa's company or entity, had refused to sign a contract and all of that. So it seems strange if the evidence that Mr. Salim Essa mentioned or included Ms. Mullifer when he was talking about the suspension of 4 executives at Eskom already on the 10th, because Ms. Mullifer had not been included as one of the executives to be suspended at the meeting in Durban. And then it would be quite interesting if that is true. It would be quite interesting that when the minister came to the meeting with the board, she talked about 4 and not 3 portfolios which would be subjected to the inquiry.
No,
and if Mr. Salim Essa also introduced himself as an advisor to Minister Brown,
yes.
To Ms. Daniels.
Yes. No, as I said, Chairperson, I'm very interested in the minister at some point to explain the meeting of the 11th, because the whole issue of the suspension, how it unfolded, me attending the meeting with her, and us not even having discussed the materiality of that issue, at least even before the meeting, and that it is something that, as I said, that it still stays with me till today, that I have no answers to, other than the fact that I attended that meeting. And
yeah. Okay, all right.
Chair.
Is there anything arising?
Chairperson?
Is there anything arising?
Oh, yes. Just to add to your collection of information there, Chairperson, Mr. Tsotsi, when he is doing the composition of the subcommittees, remember, he says he received an email from Mr. Salim Essa how to compose the subcommittees. He says, I quietly ignored his submission, and he sent his to the minister. Obviously, the minister denies what I'm about to say. He says, whereupon the minister responded with the exact submission I had received from Salim Essa. I kept going back and forth with this process of chopping and changing the allocation of the minister until she called me to a meeting. At the meeting was Salim Essa and Tony Gupta. She merely informed me that the board allocations will be the way she had sent them to me. This she did in the presence of these 2 gentlemen.
Yes, and of course he also said the minister gave him her composition of the committees of the board that was identical to the composition of the board, of the committees of the board that had been proposed or emailed to him by Mr. Salim Essa.
Yes.
And this would have been, I think, either in December 2014 or January. I seem to think it was December. Yeah.
The exchanges are right at the beginning.
It must be January.
It is December the 1st, and then it spills over to January 2015.
Yes, but at any rate, before
Yes.
March
Correct.
2015.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Ms. Mokholo, thank you very much for coming to assist the commission. You probably will come back because there is still some affidavit that you are preparing for the commission. So we should see you in due course. But thank you very much for coming today, and you are now excused.
Thank you, Chairperson.
We are going to take the lunch adjournment. It's 1:30 now. We will resume at 2:30.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.